Hi, welcome to Senior Moments. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is Joyce Schultz, and she's going to tell us about her life experiences. Hi, Joyce.
Hi, nice to be here, and thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for
Um,
coming. You're our
yeah,
first guest for this new
I'm
program. I am
excited.
too. So you can
Anyway,
start wherever you like and take as long as you like.
okay, I am a Midwest transplant to Gig Harbor, Washington. I grew up in Ohio, Toledo, Ohio, and lived there 25 years and got married and transferred to the Detroit metropolitan area. I graduated from college, the University of Toledo, and my major was community health, which kind of led me to my retirement career. After moving to Michigan, the Detroit metropolitan area in 1978, um, I started working in corporate America for the auto industry. And that was quite exciting. It wasn't where my passion lied, but it was a job. And I had, we had bills to pay and whatever. And so I grew up in that for about 20 years and started out as an admin assistant and progressed into purchasing and human resources. And my I like people. I like people a lot. So once I finally got into human resources, it was kind of where I felt more comfortable because I got to meet a lot of people. I got to know them. I got to onboard them. And I realized that I was much calmer and happier. So, we had family, raised kids, and things happen in life, and we had to, at some point, my husband was looking for a job, and so then in 1997 we transferred out to Gig Harbor, Washington. So that was a great life change for us. Our children were in high school. It was a very difficult move for probably everyone but my husband. And because he was launching into a new job, a new area of his interest. And, we were just following him with love, of course, with love. But my goal was to make sure my children were okay. They were in high school at the time, and that's a tough move at that moment in their lives. So, anyway, I just decided I'm done with corporate America. I want to do something that's more satisfying to me. So I just started looking around and interviewed at Tacoma Community College, which is a relatively local college, community college. In fact, there was a branch here in Gig Harbor, and I just applied for a job as uh, I don't even know what I was. I was a coordinator. It was so long ago, I forget what I was. Um, a coordinator for some non-credit certificate programs, not thinking I would ever get the job, but I did. And so I was in charge of, it was called a worker retraining program, certificate programs to retrain people in computer applications. And I got to hire the instructors and build the curriculum and also the correctional officer program, which there is a women's prison here in Gig Harbor. So it was a training program to certify correctional officers. That was pretty interesting.
Yeah, that
But
sounds interesting.
yeah, and so I did that for about 12 years, and it was also the non-credit program, lifelong education, personal enrichment classes, arts and speakers and meditation and all kinds. I hired all kinds of instructors who did things that were their passion. So I met so many great people, and that's, I think, what makes me happy. And I'm actually an introvert, so this is kind of an outlet for me to
Yeah.
start meeting people in the community, other than at the grocery store, the clerks, which I went to a lot in the beginning because I was lonely. And the kids were doing well, and by now they're off to college, and we were kind of empty nesters. So just kept doing that for a long time. But, after a while, I did it for 12 years. After a while, it becomes a little bit um, mundane. And it was a great job. It's a great place to work. But I started looking, and there was the Boys and Girls Club was building a building in town, and they were going to have a senior center inside the Boys and Girls Club because there was space to share. And during the school year, the children weren't there. So how could they best utilize the building? The city decided to put a Boys and Girls Club in there. Actually, it wasn't the city, but they worked with the city on that. So my boss at the time said, that's a job for you, because she knew that I was reaching the end of my interest in my current position. So I applied for that job, once again, not thinking I had a chance in, what heck, to get it, but I did. And so it was the first senior center that Gig Harbor had. So I got to start that from the ground up, which is very exciting because I could do pretty much anything I wanted, because there hadn't been one in town and nobody knew what the right way to do it was. So I just kind of made it up as I went along. My supervisor and I just did it. I got to name it. It was called the Active Retirement and Senior Center of Gig Harbor. And, there were in the beginning days when I was sitting there by myself because it was just starting. And, I started doing some marketing, and it was a little before social media. I'm kind of dating myself, aren't I? A little bit before social media. A lot of websites, emails. I was, going to different organizations talking about it, and just started growing. I started meeting some wonderful people. They'd walk through the doors, and I realized I'm home now. This is where I want to be. I want to um, be with these people. I think what happened is, growing up, let me back up a little bit. I was probably in my 50s at the time, which I'm a little older now. And so growing up, I didn't really have grandparents. I had a grandmother, a maternal grandmother, but I did not know my paternal grandfathers I was very young when my paternal grandmother passed away. I was the youngest in the family, so my parents were older, so I didn't know grandparents. And I was always envious of my friends who had grandparents, and oh, we're going to visit my grandparents. Oh, my grandmother, did this for me, that. And I was always a little bit envious of that. I never had it. So now it's very different when they aren't related to you, but it's seeing older people age and who they are, and listen to their beautiful stories. Because I'll tell you, we have beautiful stories to tell. We are the masters of knowledge. We have rich history. As seniors, we're just full of good stuff. And it's unfortunate that a lot of seniors are viewed as invisible by society. But I'm trying to change that. Currently, I am still employed. I am the director of the Gig Harbor Senior Center, and I have been probably for actually since 2009. So I've met so many people. I love these people. Everyone who comes through the door, if they're cranky, if they're happy, if they're lonely, whatever, they all have a moment in time to be recognized. And that's my job. I have the best job in town, is how I feel.
It sounds like it. So is this a place just where seniors can come and hang out?
Yes. Yes, it's called the Gig Harbor Senior Center. At the moment, we're in a temporary location. We will be building a building in the next couple of years. We're in that process of, we have the land identified and the drawings, and then we have to go through all the permitting and whatever, but we are moving forward with that. So yes, they can come Monday through Thursday. Uh, most of the day they can pick and choose what they want to attend. We have meals, we have games, we have programs, speakers, guest speakers. We try have to fulfill the needs of the aging population, which is socialization, good nutrition, and physical activity. We have a great Tai Chi program. The Tai Chi
Oh,
program is taught by a senior, which is good and it is only for seniors. I've been in yoga classes, and I was even in a Tai Chi program many years ago that I was middle-aged, and there's 18, 20-year-olds in it. And, I'm watching them do their forms, and I'm like, I want to look like them, but my body's not working here. So I love that our program is just for seniors, because we're not trying to live through our aging body and do what a 25, 30-year-old can do.
now what
Because
do
we
you
keep
guys consider senior 60 and up or?
55,
Oh, okay.
55 years and up. And we have a couple people who are probably well into their 90s, mid 90s. And, it's just great. But, the stories I hear and the people I see bring joy to me. I just had one of our volunteers say a story about, we have a gentleman who's recently become a widower, and he's still very much grieving the loss of his wife. And she has gone through the death of her spouse maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And she just sits and she'll talk to him about, this is okay, this is what you'll feel, don't apologize. Everyone grieves differently. And at the end of it, he wanted a hug. Well, we're not supposed to hug, but she's like, I had to hug him. He wanted a hug. So now every time he comes in before he leaves, he'll ask her for a hug,
I wonder who makes
because
up that rule. You can't hug a senior.
I
I mean,
know,
children,
it's
you understand, but and still even that's questionable, could be
yeah.
debated, but I mean, seniors really.
Seniors are, I'm going to say, for a lot of reasons, are very lonely people.
Right.
They put on the facade that they're happy, that they're okay. We don't want to burden anyone. We're going to get through life. It will be fine. I'll sit home. I'm not going to bother my daughter to come pick me up if I can't drive anymore. I'll just sit home and, I don't know, eat cheese and crackers. I don't know what they're doing. So my job as the director is to find these folks, invite them in, and I try to be inviting when they come in the door, and realize that I've never seen them before. Or sometimes, even if I know I've never seen them before, I'm like, oh, you look familiar. And they look at me and like, oh, well, maybe it was just the grocery store or something. I just want them to somehow feel welcome, that they're being seen. And that's my job. And and you know what? I shouldn't have even said that. That's what we should do for each other. That is how we make those connections, and how we make other people feel good. And I mean, I feel so privileged to be part of the aging process. These folks, and even myself, I get lonely sometimes, and that's when I go to the grocery store or call a friend back home. I love calling my friends back home, and we talk. It's so silly. We talk about high school. I mean, I'm not going to tell you how many years ago that was. Or we talk about college, and the crazy stuff we did, but it's just, we all need that. And I hope people don't forget that it's always okay to connect and to reconnect. And I don't know, it's just a fun place to be every day that I go to.
Now, how did you get this started? Did you write a grant or how could someone start something like?
No, actually, it was easier than that. This particular case was easier when it started out at the Boys and Girls Club, um, the previous mayor, who's since passed, was a force to be reckoned with. And she negotiated with the Boys and Girls Club that she would support them coming into town as long as they put a senior center in the location to share the space, because it was a useful use of space that would be unused during the daytime, because the Boys and Girls Club was before and after school program. So they negotiated that, the city got on board with it. And I was actually at that point an employee of the Boys and Girls Club. So, and financially supported by the Boys and Girls Club. But once they sold the building eventually after almost 10 years. So the senior center became homeless. And at that point, we got together a task force, a couple of seniors, and we called in the county and the city and other organizations that might be interested, just seeing where are we going to go? What are we going to do? And, the Parks and Recreation were involved, and we went round and round in several meetings, and we can't let the senior center die. It's already been in existence for almost 10 years. These seniors need a place to go. And so we landed on an organization. It's called the Greater Gig Harbor Foundation, and it is a nonprofit. And we had several meetings with them, and it was decided that we would go under the Greater Gig Harbor Foundation as a nonprofit under their umbrella. And so since then, being a nonprofit, yes, we've had to write grants. We rely on fundraising, private donation, and grants. So it's a little bit more difficult, but we're doing it, and we are, as I said before, we are going to be building a building, and that's very exciting. A little daunting, but we will get there, and the funds will come, because seniors need a home. They need a home. We need a home. So I just thought of another story. It was a little bit ago. We had a power outage right around lunchtime at the senior center. And the cook was in the kitchen, and lunch was pretty much made, so it didn't really affect her. She was using gas stoves, and so it didn't really affect her. She said, well, is everyone going to stay, or should I just cancel lunch or whatever? So I went out and I said, so will you all be staying for lunch? And they're all like, well, yeah. I mean, there was enough light coming through the windows that we could still see each other. And it was cold outside, and it was winter. And so she continued to plate the lunches, and we served it. And in the meantime, 2 or 3 more people walked in, because they said, I didn't want to sit home alone in the dark.
Oh.
And I came in to be with people. And these are people we hadn't seen before, or, hadn't been there in a while, but they remembered or knew about us. And they're like, well, I can drive over to the senior center and be there and be with other people. So I'm not sitting at home while my house is cooling down because there's no power. And that's who we are. That's how we support the senior community. Everybody's welcome. Everyone's welcome.
Do they have busing to and from this, or?
We do not at this
Okay.
time have busing, but the community just started a baby step. It's called Pierce Transit, which is the bus service that serves Gig Harbor, Washington. Just started a runner van that will do door-to-door service. So it's a baby step to get people there, but you have to live within the incorporated community.
Mm.
So yeah, a lot of people ride share. If we know someone can't get there, if people haven't been there, it's like, well, where's so-and-so? You got to call them, Joyce, or they'll call them, if they have their number. And we check in on each other. And aging is an interesting process, for lack of a better word. It's like we have our youthful minds and our aging bodies, and um, we still are playful. We're still, joking. We're still trying to make each other happy. Um, you know, we're individuals with needs. We want to connect with people. We want new friends. The beauty of aging is making those new friends and those new connections. It's so important as we age to connect with our peers. We all have that bossy kid at home who's trying to tell us what we should be doing or shouldn't be doing or how we should be doing it, or we don't have anyone. I think the most important thing is connecting with your peers, because we're all going through the same thing. We're all maybe not feeling well one day, maybe we're feeling great another day. We all want to share. People kind of guffaw when I say, oh, well, we have bingo every Monday. And they're like, well, that's for seniors. Well, look at yourself. That's what I want to say, but I don't. And, but bingo isn't just B9 and G52. Bingo is sitting around a table, helping each other, looking at each other, laughing, winning a silly prize, being happy. It's communicating, it's socializing, it's sharing. It's the beauty of aging, is being around peers. So if nothing else, we need to remember that we need to make friends with people our own age. And that's my work. That's the work I'm doing, is connecting people and getting them to care about each other, which that's the easy part. They almost automatically care about each other, which I find a beautiful thing. It's especially when so many of them walk through the doors lonely or wanting to tell me that their spouse just died or their significant other moved away, and they have tears in their eyes. And I just introduce them, and everyone opens their arms and accepts them. It's I don't even have words for it. It's amazing.
That's awesome. I mean, my sister's disabled. She's 69, but she's been in nursing homes most of her life. And so I get to be around that community a lot, and I know what you're talking about. And we just moved her yesterday to another facility, and oh, she loves it. And just that support, and the staff are great. And now my father-in-law, from Marietta, Ohio. They have what they call O'Neill Center, and they have a bus that will come pick him up, bring him
Mhm.
home. And that gave my mother-in-law, before she passed away, a nice break during the day, because he was getting dementia and Parkinson's, and her health was failing, and she just could not take care of him the way, he wanted to be taken care of. And so
Well,
they give him a
caretakers are,
shower though, too, there.
oh,
That was
wow,
a big
that's
help.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Caretakers have a big job too. We have one couple, it's a husband wife that come in, and her husband's going through dementia, escalating quite quickly, and she's trying to figure out her next step. What, he's escalating quite quickly, but she's suffering. She's suffering because it's 24/7 of her being the caretaker. And she's moving forward and making some hard decisions. I mean, this is her lifelong loved one.
Everything.
And he's great. He's great in his own mind, which is good for him on one level. But for her, she's suffering. And so, we're all embrace her when she comes in. There's a group of women who have, outside of the senior center, keep in contact with her, invite her for coffee when she has a free moment. And so, the beauty of aging, um, the importance of aging, and I keep going back to it, is have those peer connections, because we will support each other, because we know we're all going through something, because it's just what happens, things happen with our health, our well-being, you
Yeah.
know.
And to be going through so much hard things in your life, your ailing health, your spouse's ailing health, the death of a spouse, and to be alone in these
Mhm.
times when you really need people to lean on.
Yeah, you do. You need people, and that, I think, is the most common denominator that I see as the director of the senior center, is loneliness. And people don't want to admit that they're lonely. Heck, I get lonely. I'm married. I have a child nearby with her children, but there's still times I get lonely. I get homesick. We all get there, but I see so many people who live alone. And when they walk through the door, I want it to be a family for them. I want them to feel comfortable, sit down, have a cup of coffee. Sometimes it takes a couple times to walk through that door to feel comfortable, of course, and to find that friendly face that you connect with, because it's all about connections. And, we encourage them to participate and have a conversation. We have one woman who her husband passed away several years ago, but she's still heavily grieving. And she's also going through a little bit of dementia now. She comes in and she's so sad all the time, and she'll sit and have a cup of coffee and she'll get up and she'll leave. 2 weeks later, she'll come back with the same story. I just miss him so much. And she'll sit and have a cup of coffee. Well, today she's going to have lunch too. So, she's having a hard time. And we keep reaching out. People talk to her. I don't know. It's a process. Everyone ages differently. You can stand 5 80-year-olds next to each other, and everyone is aging differently. There'll be that person who is physically great, can do all kinds of things physically and looks wonderful. Then there's, someone who is ill for some reason, and, aging more quickly. And then there's the people who are going through some beginnings of dementia, or it's amazing to watch the aging process. And of course, some of it's genes, some of it's lifestyle. Um, it can't have too much sugar. Sugar's no good, but they
Right.
like their sugar. All those diabetics like their sugar.
Mm.
But, temperance and moderation.
What would you say that's the general consensus of that population do you work with? What's their like as far as society, religion, politics, what's going on in the world? Do they all come across different opinions, or is there they all consensing a consensus among them of how they feel? Because I remember my grandparents always saying, oh, the world today, our kids today, how they could see the world in comparison how it used to be when they were growing up.
Well, we still hear that. In fact, I say that, like, oh, I can't believe it's so different. I'm glad I don't have young children today. So I'm that person now. But I find it very interesting because of the political climate out there, which is so divisive, and so it can be very extreme. Not everyone's extreme, of course, but um, we can have political conversations, debates. No one gets mad. And if they do, they keep it to themselves, they'll stop talking or whatever. But for the most part, there's conversation about politics and current events. And, opinions are exchanged. and they're not, they're accepted. They just move on, and it's like, okay, next, what are we going to do now? It's not, it's an environment that I guess, I haven't ever really seen it get heated. Maybe I haven't heard every conversation, but I haven't really seen it get heated. But there's maybe certain things that are said, and I'm like, oh, we don't talk about that here. We're not going to say things like that. I might kind of reprimand once in a while nicely, but no, they're very forgiving. In the next moment, they're on to another conversation about the weather, or about, what they did yesterday, or who they saw, or whatever. So that's a great thing about, maybe it's just the environment they're in at the senior center, knowing that it's not going to be tolerated. But I just think, we all have our opinions, but we're here to have a good time. They come to the senior center to have a good time. And for all I know, there are people who don't come because maybe they didn't have a good time, but I'm not going to admit that.
And they are the invisible generation. I
Yes.
mean, they're in their homes, they're not out
Mhm.
as much as everybody else or vocal as everybody else. And it's a generation. I know I cherish my grandparents' generation and my aunts and my uncles' generation. And now I'm getting into that generation, and it's like we're just not heard or we're not seen. And so I was kind of wanting to have this show to, hear these voices. And I know, thank you so much for you and Kathy setting up some people for me to have on to where we could start getting those voices. And I hope, starts getting out there where other seniors can watch this and think maybe I have something to say too, a story, or tell about their life story growing up, or, what they're doing, what they've done with their life like you have, or whatever they want to share, just to get
Yeah.
them out there. And here's a face, here's a voice that you may not be familiar with, because everybody's heard all this other chatter of these other age groups, and
Yeah.
they have so much wisdom and
They do. The stories are, they don't think their stories are important, which is what I found. You kind of have to dig them, dig them out of them, because at the holiday time, we had kind of a lull between lunch and when our guest speaker was coming, and I said, well, let's talk about holiday traditions. And all I heard was crickets. I Everyone just stood there, and I mean, I stood there and everyone was just staring at me. And I said, okay, I'll share my holiday traditions growing up. And I did that. And I said, anyone else? And finally, someone spoke up and said, well, I'm from a family of 8. And she went on and talked about a great story about how this family of 8 kids did their holidays, how they celebrated, which then opened up the confidence of others to, well, maybe my story will be fun to tell. And all of a sudden people were just, it became a conversation. It wasn't even just telling stories, it just became a conversation. And so as you age, you kind of realize, because you're not working anymore, or you don't feel valued, or because you're not working, but you realize that, oh, I have something to say. And people were interested, they would encourage that person to say more. And those are the stories that I try to pull out of people, that that we have a pilot, a Air Force pilot, and he got up and told about his last flight around the world,
Mhm.
where, he made a choice to stay somewhere or take this plane to get home, and he stayed somewhere, and that plane to get home crashed.
Mhm.
I mean, that's a story that he lives with. It was a split-second decision he made that saved his life. and he shared it with us. And those are stories that he probably didn't think was important until, I goaded him into standing up and talking at one point and talking about some of his escapades as the Air Force pilot back in I think it was the Korean War. He's in his early 90s. I don't know what war it was. So people in general have to realize that seniors are valuable to the community. They contribute to the community in many ways as consumers, as historians. I mean, my dad was in World War II. He was in Patton's Third Army, and he never, ever talked about it, his time there, other than, oh, I was on a boat to Japan. And I'm like, well, weren't you in the Army? What were you doing on a ship to Japan? Well, that's how they got us from here to there. And until he was dying. And then he told my brother, only my brother, some things about how he was in Germany and how he had to kill people, and how it was, just whatever he went through. And at his funeral, two people who were in his platoon, he was the sergeant or something. And see, I don't even know. And called my brother because he had the same last name, found out, and said, I saw that your father passed. And he said, I want you to know he saved my life more than once. And it's just, I have chills now thinking about that, because my father was so closed about what happened during the war. And, and then after the war, he was a person that was selected that had to go to widows' homes and tell them that their husband, at that time it was all men, it's World War II, wouldn't be coming home. And he, I didn't know he had to do that. And, so those stories are inside of us that are never spoken about. And I feel like it's kind of my job as the director of the senior center to pull those stories out. And it's hard to do because I sometimes forget that they have important stories, and just getting through the day. And but I'm going to remember now. I'm going to go back to this
They're
week and
walking
remember.
history books.
Yes, they
It's,
really are.
it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
And we don't value what we've lived. My mother-in-law died at the age of 101. And my husband and I were just talking about it, and we're like, look at what she was born in 1913, I think. She's been gone for a few years. And I said, look at what she lived through. Look at what she lived through. End of World War I, World War II, the Depression. She lived through the death of a child. She lived through the technology age and fax machines. We don't even have fax machines anymore, do we? I don't even know. But look at what she lived through. And she never really talked about it too much. We heard stories. She was from Poland. She was first generation, immigrated from Poland, ended in New York, traveled down, somehow got to Michigan. And her mother, I do know her mother came over alone at the age of 13 from Poland.
Wow.
Too. And then they moved back and came back. But those stories are in each and every one of us, and we need to share them, and we need to write them down. So I hope people listening to this write down their stories for their children, and for people to know that history is not only in the history books, it's inside of each and every one of us.
That's what I'm hoping, that people want to come on and share their history, because, this is recorded. It's going to go on YouTube and their grandchildren can see it. They may not have the time right now. They may not be concerned about that right now, but they will later on as they get
Mhm.
older. They'll wish they had heard those stories.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, I don't know. Being a senior is freeing on one level because, um, and I don't just see it with myself, I see it with others. You kind of get over on, you don't really have cliques anymore like you did when you were younger. You you're less interested in, it's not that you don't want to please people, but you're more interested in what makes you happy and how can I live the rest of my life on a level of satisfaction of being a good well, this is, I guess I'm speaking for myself, of being a good person and still serving others, because I think that's, I don't know if I mentioned, but my undergrad degree was in community health. So I've always cared about people and their well-being. And, when my friends were getting magazines on gardening and decorating their house, and so I'm getting prevention magazine and good health, and because I've always been interested in that aspect of society of taking care of ourselves and our mind, body, and spirit, rather than more so, not rather than, but more so than material things. And uh, I like to serve other people in many capacities. So I've always been interested in people and what's going on inside of them and their minds and bodies and spirits, and that's what fascinates me. And so as I age, I've kind of let go of, you know, the mundane daily routines of housework and all that. And I read and, you know, just connect with somehow with others, and that makes me happy.
I imagine elderly all through generations have felt loneliness, but I wonder if it's more so now because, maybe families used to take care of grandma and maybe not so
Mhm.
much anymore. And with everybody involved on their phones and the internet and just the way society is now, that maybe they're even more on the back burner maybe than in the past. That maybe the kids don't feel that obligation they used to take care of their parents, check
Yeah,
on them.
I think that's true. And what's happened, not just since COVID, but yes, some things have changed since COVID for sure, but is families are distended family. I mean, my son lives in Texas. I live in Washington. My daughter was living in LA. She's now back in Washington, but they're across the country. And as you age, especially when you get into your 80s and 90s, do I really want to get on an airplane? But the families are so busy, they can't come visit you. So now so yes, they're very lonely, and technology is daunting to older people who haven't grown up with it. I've had the luxury of having corporate America jobs and having, and okay, now I'm aging myself, but the beginnings of emails and of social media and all that stuff. I was working at that time and learned it from the beginning, from the bottom up. I'm still learning it. But a lot of these 80, 90-year-old people didn't, first of all, didn't have jobs where they had to use technology, or, they did, but they've let it go since they've retired and they're lost. So what I've done is one of the local cell phone things, should I say T-Mobile, they come in once a month. They come into the senior center once a month. You don't have to be a T-Mobile customer. They come in, and if you have any questions about your cell phone or your pad, they will sit one-on-one with you and work you through it. And sometimes every month they come in, they may talk to the same person, going over the same questions of getting him, how do I download this picture so I can email it to my son? And they are so kind and they are so patient. And, I talked to the manager of the store and I said, thanked him. I said, thank you for doing that. And he said, that's our job. We want people to be comfortable using it. We don't care if you're a customer of ours. We just want you to know, we just want these folks to know how to communicate with their family and friends and connect. Because, like you said, COVID changed the world. People are well, we're zooming right now. People are zooming more. Earlier today I was on a 2-hour training session via Zoom with somebody out of New Hampshire. um, it's wonderful, but a lot of seniors don't know how to do that. And if we can teach them, they can see their grandkids, great grandchildren's faces. They can be there. And it's not the same, but it's good. It's a good connection.
And those in nursing homes had it the hardest during COVID because they
Oh,
were locked down. Nobody could
horrible,
come
wasn't
in.
it?
I know my sister, she's afraid of needles, so she refused a COVID shot. Not that she had anything against it, she just don't want any needle. And so she had to spend Christmas in her bedroom. She wasn't allowed to come down the hall and hear the Christmas music.
Ah,
And I
I
was
don't
just
know.
so upset because staff there weren't made to take the COVID shot. So they're walking around room to room, around all the food, around
Oh my
everybody
gosh.
with no COVID shot. But her, she couldn't go in the cafeteria and enjoy the Christmas party. That
Oh boy.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
And
I'm
so
sorry
last
to hear
Christmas was
that.
better, but yeah, and the year before was better, but it was when all that was going on. It's like, oh, it just killed me that I had to tell her she couldn't go out of her room.
I
Like,
know. I can
down here, the
imagine.
Christmas music and join everybody. It was heartbreaking.
I
And
know,
so,
looking back, it's I think some decisions that were made by government organizations, whatever, were maybe, but we won't go into that. But
yeah,
you're right. There was one gentleman, his wife was in an adult family home, dying, and he couldn't go in. He literally would go visit her every day. When it went on for what, 2 years. I know the senior center was closed for 2 years, locked doors, but he literally would go visit her every day outside her window, touching the window pane. Her hand was up there, his hand was up there, blowing kisses, pretend hugs. He was so depressed that he couldn't touch her and hug her. And yeah, those things we lived through.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then, the big word out was, don't go see grandma because,
Yeah,
you'll
might
kill
make her sick.
grandma.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's go see grandma. Today, go see grandma. Give her a
Yeah.
call. You may not think you have anything to say to her, but she or he, they will love it, that connection. They will feel special. They will feel so special to get that phone call. My kids just text me and I'm like, could you pick up the phone and call me? I want to hear your voice. And when I called my son one day. He goes, what's wrong? I said, I just wanted to hear your voice. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's aging is tough. It's tough in many ways, but it's good because like I said, it's a little bit freeing on in a lot of ways of just being who, it's we can be who we are as we age. And that's okay. And if we have a bad day, tomorrow's going to be better.
I think it's kind of like, when you're 13, you want to listen to what the 16-year-old girls and 8-year-old girls are talking about. So you know what's coming. And I'm
Yeah.
63 and I find myself kind of wanting to know women 10 years, 20 years older, so I can know what's coming because we're all in this new territory
Yeah.
that
It
nobody
is a new
talks
territory.
about.
And It's always new. You know, I'm in my early 70s and you know, it is new. You start thinking differently. You don't know when that paradigm change happens, but you start thinking differently. You know, I just got a new car and I'm like, is this going to be my last car? It's I don't like to think like that. But you do start thinking things like that. And those are the things I don't want to take over my life. I want to live each day the best I can. And yeah, good days, bad days, you know, it's like rainy days, sunny days. And enjoy the moments I have because it doesn't matter what age you are. We don't know how many moments we still have. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter.
And that's new because we always had the future to think about. And now suddenly it's like, oh, gee, will I even be alive to think about 20 years from now? Like, so
I
what do
know.
I do with my money? What do I do with my house? What do I do with all this stuff? Like, do I start getting rid of it now? Do I wait? I mean,
Isn't that the truth? The stuff. And one of the hardest things that my husband and I did was we revised our will. And when, you know, we were like younger and had young children, it wasn't that hard to do because, you know, we thought we'd live forever. When all of a sudden we have to have power of attorney, we have to have, you know, which child's going to want to take care of me the best, which one's going to do my health, you know, executive, whatever, and or do they there were some big decisions that were very difficult to make only because you're thinking about your end of life. And we have to think about that and get things in order and but that's not fun. That's but we have to do it and get through it.
I
And
just got the paperwork today, power of attorney living will. I did mine over 20 years ago, but it needs redone. My husband
right.
never had one, so I'm gonna do one for him. And it's just things. And just said the other day he wants to write his will. I feel like right,
Yeah.
it's all
Yeah,
new territory.
it is. It's those are not the fun things, but you got to do them and move on.
Yeah.
So
And we're, trying to get custody of our little grandchildren. And we just had a friend stop by today. He's older than my husband, and he's got this little tiny toddler granddaughter that he him adopted her and the
oh
brother. And
wow.
there's a lot of grandparents in those situations
Yes, there
today
are.
now.
There are, and that's unfortunate, but at least they're there to take care of those children. And yeah, that's a tough one for sure.
Yeah.
So anyway,
So is
I
there anything else you'd like to add or you didn't get to cover?
I don't think so. I think I'm aging as we sit here.
Well, you will be the example because people want to know, well, what's it like to go on the senior moments? Well, you're my first one, so you're
Oh,
setting the example here. And everybody will have something different to talk about or they want to share. And
mhm.
um, this one line from the movie Walk the Line, Johnny Cash, and the guy stops Johnny Cash from singing, and he says, yeah, we've heard that song sung just like you're singing it. And he said, he says, if you were laying in a ditch and you just had one song to sing, are you telling me that's the one song that you would sing? He says, or would you sing something different? Something, to tell God what you think about your time here on earth. And that line is like years ago, I heard it and it just keeps coming back, playing on my head. It's like, I want people to be able to have a place, which, now I do, where they can come and just tell us what you think about your time here on earth or what you want to talk about, what you feel is important. And when my mother-in-law was passing 2019, I was able to sit down with her and I said, let's do your memoir.
Oh,
And I felt like before it was over, I realized I was walking her home. She started when she was a little child. She remembered being curled up in her daddy's shoulder. She talked about her horse, a king, and just went through her childhood. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm walking her home. And end up reading it for her eulogy. and the place was
That's
packed, and
beautiful.
everybody's eyes and mouth was just open, like they thought it was her talking. I mean, and I said, well, I dictate, what she said. And ever since then, I wish I could do that for people that, they're on their deathbed, just to say,
Yeah.
what do you want to share? What do you want to tell the world? Because when I was 25 years old, had ectopic pregnancy, and I was a person of bright white light, I thought, wow, I didn't
Oh,
make much of a mark on on earth. Everybody's going to forget me, and I was too quiet. I didn't say anything. And so I've been thinking about what can I do to give people a voice? Because, I've done 400 on near-death experiences.
yeah.
And I just been thinking the last few months, there's more to life than death. Everybody has their life review once they're gone, and this just leaves something here. Just
It's
somebody to
lost.
learn from.
Yeah. Well, that's, I love that you did that because you're right. So many stories are lost. And just like my dad, told my brother at his end of life about the war and what he went through. And I'm sure my brother didn't share all of it with us, but um, you did that with your loved one and you know, journaling, people find journals of their loved ones after they're gone and their stories are there. But if you're not a person who journals, those stories are just lost. So you do that. You need to do that
Yeah.
and talk to people at the end of their life somehow. That's and yeah, we all need to do that. Get more involved in the end of life because we're all going to get there.
My aunt Dorla, she got Alzheimer's, and so she wrote a little book, had it typed up in a little binder. And it was years later, somebody gave it to me, and I kept it because it was a little memoir of her life.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, she had said, somebody told me I should have put this in here. So she wrote on the back page, and it was about her drowning when she was little.
Oh,
And I was like, this is a near-death experience. Everything she described, of course, she didn't know that had a
yeah.
name or this happens to other people. And my mom had always said, well, you're like her, kind of psychic, like. And I thought, well, it must be a hereditary thing. But then I realized, no, it's a NDE thing. And so I was so glad I got to hear her memories. And
Oh, I bet.
I remember
I
my mom
bet.
talking about they were so poor they would go out on the road and get coal, pick up coal off the road, for the fire to keep warm. And I saw that on Angela's Ashes, and when they were going out in the and picking up coal out. That's how poor they were. Oh my gosh, that's how poor my parent
Yeah.
and her siblings were. And so those stories are interesting. And I see on YouTube people coming on talking about what the Titanic was like. They were there.
Oh boy,
So
that
it's
would
like,
be
oh,
interesting.
this
Yeah.
is so nice that we have YouTube where we can hear these stories.
Hmm.
So
For sure.
I might as well
And
make it to use, not just for young people, but to
yeah.
keep these in a treasure chest. So thank you so much for being my guinea pig.
Thank you, Peggy. I appreciate this opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, and I will send this to Kathy later today and make sure she sends it to you in email
Okay.
as soon as it's published.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take
Bye.
care.
Bye-bye.